Hello. Today we'll be going over the Unit 3 summary, which covers Module 6 and Module 7. The first two modules we studied in this class discuss different types of sampling and studies, so it only follows that Module 6 aims to teach us how to examine the types of distribution. The important thing to remember here is that there are two types of variables, quantitative and categorical. This is crucial because knowing this helps to determine how best to display the information and how to interpret it. In the simplest terms, categorical variables are information-based, and quantitative variables are number-based. The data from categorical variables can best be displayed in pie charts, bar charts, pictograms, and frequency tables, because we can only keep track of how often a categorical variable occurs on a particular value. Here I would quickly like to point out that pictograms can be misleading due to the graphics involved, so always look at the actual data before making an assumption based off of it. The data from quantitative variables can best be displayed in histograms, stem plots, dot plots, box plots, and mean tables. We will now dive a bit deeper into some of these. With number-based data, we can measure more than just frequency, such as shape, center, spread, and potential outliers. There are three main measures for the center of a distribution, which are mode, mean, and median. Each of these measures is based off a different idea of describing the center of a distribution. For example, mode uses the most commonly recurring number, mean uses the average, and median uses the middle number of a numbered list. There is also a strong relationship between the mean and median. When looking at a shape of a graph and whether it's skewed or not, you can make an educated guess on whether the mean or median will be bigger, which can be seen in these two examples here. Taking what we just learned, we can now make and analyze a histogram. In this example, you can see from the data set, we were able to make a frequency table, which then allowed us to make a histogram. Remember that histograms use intervals, so you won't get exact data. To analyze this, we would use SOCs, shape, outliers, center, and spread. Here's a quick example of a stem plot and how to create one. Here I would like to point out that it differs from a histogram because it preserves original data, which could be very beneficial based on the type of research you're doing. Moving on to box plots. The best way to create them and to analyze them are by using the 5-number summary, which includes the median, the IQR, which includes the first and third quartile, and the lowest and highest value. Here is a great example on how to create a box plot. You can see from our data set, we placed them in a numbered list, so we could find our 5-number summary items, which we then used to create the box plot. The IQR is also a crucial factor as it helps us to identify outliers, which is important depending on the type of research the data is for. Here are also some guidelines on what to do with outliers and whether they should be included or not. Standard deviation is another important number that can be used to analyze a numerical distribution. It measures the spread of the average distance between data points. Here is also an example of how to find standard deviation, with the equation that is used to find it. Lastly, here's a quick summary of Module 6 and the most important things to remember, which is how to identify if a variable is categorical or quantitative, how to display the information, and the best way to analyze it. Moving on to Module 7, which focuses on examining relationships between two variables, we must remember that there are two types: the explanatory variable, or independent variable, the response variable, or the dependent variable. Here is also a table that illustrates the 4 types of relationships we can have, and we will now focus on 3 of them. First off, we have the categorical explanatory variable and the quantitative response variable relationship. This can be best examined using side-by-side box plots, which can be seen in this example from our river analysis assignment. To analyze it, we would compare each box plot using the 5-number summary towards another box plot and use terms such as on average or the middle 50% spans. This helps us to distinguish between the groups and gives us a reference value to base our analysis off of. Next, we will look at what to do when we have two categorical variables. This relationship can best be examined using a contingency table, where we must identify the explanatory value and find the conditional percentages to help analyze the information. In this example, you can see how we use the column percentages in order to find how likely a patient was to die under the nurse Gilbert, which was 84%. Lastly, we will look at what to do when both variables are quantitative. The best way to examine this relationship is to use a scatter plot, which can plot both numerical data on a graph, as seen in this example. To analyze this type of graph, we look at direction, form, strength, and outliers. For graphs that have a linear form, we can analyze it more in depth to find the regression formula. Regression specifies the dependence of the response variable on the explanatory variable, and we can use that correlation coefficient to measure that strength and direction. We will need to find the slope and intercept in order to form the equation, which can be used to make predictions. Just be wary of extrapolation, which occurs when the prediction lays outside of the dataset. Here is a good example of a scatter plot analysis, where we created a linear formula based off the slope and intercept. We then used it to make a prediction about how long it would take to travel to Skyline based on if a student was X miles away. This can be used to help figure out in the future how long it would take to get you to school. Looking at the correlation between two variables, we must remember that there could always be a third variable, or a lurking variable, that is affecting the relationship. An observed association is not enough evidence for causation, so we must always remember that association does not imply causation. When a lurking variable causes us to rethink the direction of an association, that is called Simpson's paradox. Here is a quick example of Simpson's paradox from Berkeley. In 1973, they thought that they had discovered that they were rejecting a significantly higher proportion of female applicants compared to male applicants when they looked at the total acceptance rate based on gender. However, when they broke it down by programs, they saw the opposite. Females actually had a higher acceptance rate over males. This was due to a lurking variable, which was the competitiveness of the program. Women were applying to harder programs than males, so overall it made it seem like they were being rejected more often, which was untrue. This caused them to rethink the association between gender and acceptance rates, and illustrates that association, again, does not imply causation. With this last summary page comes the end to my Module 3 summary video. So thank you for listening.